Bus driver notices crying black girl every day. One day he asks why, and uncovers a chilling secret. Mr. Howard eased the large yellow school bus to a stop on Maple Street, right in front of the imposing iron gates of Pine Ridge Estates. This wasn't like the other neighborhoods on his route. No kids playing in yards, no parents chatting at bus stops. Just perfectly manicured lawns, security cameras mounted on stone pillars, and silence. He glanced at his watch. 7:32 a.m. Right on schedule. Through the large side mirror, he could see them approaching, the same couple that appeared every morning. The man wore an expensive suit, checking his phone as he walked. The woman, tall and thin with platinum blonde hair, gripped the small girl's wrist just a little too tightly. Mr. Howard had been driving this route for 27 years. Only 3 months until retirement, and he thought he'd seen it all, until Lena appeared on his route 4 months ago. "Good morning, Lena," he called cheerfully as the little girl climbed the steps. She didn't look up. She never did. But her grip on the handrail tightened, her small knuckles widening. She was wearing a crisp blue dress with shiny black shoes that looked brand new, her hair pulled into neat braids with white ribbons woven through them. Perfect like a doll. Too perfect. "Have a wonderful day," the blonde woman called out with a wave. The man was already walking back toward their gleaming black Mercedes, not bothering to watch his daughter board. Mr. Howard nodded politely but didn't miss how Lena flinched at the woman's voice. As he closed the door and checked his mirror one more time, he saw the woman's smile instantly disappear as she turned away. Lena shuffled to the third row and slid into her usual seat. Alone. Always alone. The bus rumbled forward. In his rearview mirror, Mr. Howard watched as the first tear slid down Lena's cheek. By the second stop, where the Sullivan twins boarded with their usual chaos of laughter and flying backpacks, the little girl's shoulders would be silently shaking. By the third stop, when Malik and his friends filled the back of the bus with jokes and stories, her silent crying would be in full force. Every day. The same routine. Today, as they picked up the last children at Oak Street, Mr. Howard made an unusually bold decision. At the next red light, he called back over his shoulder. "Lena, would you mind coming up here for a minute? I could use some help with these papers." The bus went oddly quiet. Lena rarely spoke to anyone, and the other children hardly noticed her anymore, the quiet girl who cried. After a long moment, he heard the soft scuffing of her shoes as she made her way forward. She stood beside his seat, eyes downcast, hands folded in front of her like she was waiting to be scolded. "Would you mind holding this clipboard while I drive? You can sit right there." He nodded to the empty front seat reserved for emergencies. She took the clipboard without a word and slid into the seat. Up close, Mr. Howard could see dark circles under her eyes. 8-year-olds shouldn't have exhaustion etched into their faces like that. "I appreciate the help," he said gently. "Been driving this route a long time, but my old hands get stiff on cold mornings." He wasn't expecting a response, but as he navigated the turn toward Oak Ridge Elementary, he heard her whisper, "You're welcome, Mr. Howard." His heart squeezed. It was the first time she'd spoken directly to him. The rest of the ride was silent, but when they pulled up to the school, Lena lingered, holding the clipboard like it was something precious. "I can help tomorrow too," she offered, her voice so soft he almost missed it. "I'd like that very much," Mr. Howard replied, accepting the clipboard with a gentle smile. As the children filed off the bus, he watched Lena more carefully than usual. Her shoulders were hunched forward as if carrying an invisible weight. When she reached the steps, she stumbled slightly, and her small blue backpack slipped from her shoulder, spilling open on the bus floor. "I'll get that for you," Mr. Howard called, but she was already frantically gathering her things, shoving papers and books back inside with shaking hands. I'm sorry, she mumbled, panic rising in her voice. "It's all right, no rush," he assured her, but she was already zipping the bag closed. As she hurried away, Mr. Howard noticed something had been left behind, a small, worn photo album, its cover faded and corners bent with use. He picked it up, intending to call her back, but paused when he saw what had fallen open. The photo showed a smiling black family, a handsome man with kind eyes, a woman with the same heart-shaped face as Lena, and 3 children, the smallest of whom was unmistakably Lena herself. They were at a park, surrounded by balloons. Lena's 6th birthday was written in colorful marker at the bottom. Mr. Howard's brow furrowed in confusion. These people weren't the couple who dropped Lena off every morning. In fact, they looked nothing like the cold, detached pair who barely acknowledged her existence as she boarded his bus each day. He carefully turned the page, revealing more photos, Lena blowing out candles on a cake shaped like a butterfly. The same family at a beach. Lena sitting on the man's shoulders, her face lit up with laughter, a joy he'd never seen on her face. The final bell rang outside, startling him back to reality. He quickly closed the album and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Something wasn't right. The happy child in these photos bore almost no resemblance to the silent, tearful girl on his bus. And who were these people? Why did Lena have pictures of another family? As he drove the empty bus back to the depot, Mr. Howard couldn't shake the unease settling in his stomach. In 27 years of driving, he'd seen children from troubled homes, children dealing with loss, children struggling to fit in. But something about Lena's situation felt different. Wrong. That night, he couldn't sleep. The worn photo album sat on his kitchen table, and the smiling faces looked back at him accusingly. The question kept repeating in his mind. Why would a little girl carry hidden photos of a family that wasn't hers? Or was it the other way around? Why was she with a family that wasn't hers? Tomorrow, he decided, he would ask her. Carefully. Gently. Because the truth was, in all his years watching children come and go, he'd never seen eyes as haunted as Lena's, eyes that seemed to be silently screaming for help. The next morning, Mr. Howard arrived at the depot earlier than usual. The photo album felt heavy in his pocket as he ran through his pre-trip inspection with practiced efficiency. His mind, however, was far from routine checks. When the bus pulled up to Pine Ridge Estates, he spotted Lena standing between the same couple as always. Today, the woman had a tight grip on Lena's shoulder, whispering something in her ear. Whatever she said made Lena's eyes widen with fear. As she boarded, Mr. Howard smiled gently. "Morning, Lena. Would you like to help with the clipboard again today?" She nodded, relief washing over her face as she took the front seat. Once they were moving, he spoke quietly. "Lena, I found something you dropped yesterday." He kept his eyes on the road, his voice casual. A photo album. Her small body went rigid beside him. The clipboard trembled in her hands. "It's okay," he assured her. "I kept it safe for you. No one else saw it. They can't know," she whispered, so faintly he barely heard her over the engine. "Please. Who are the people in those photos, Lena?" he asked gently, stopping at a red light. Tears filled her eyes. She glanced nervously at the windows, then at the ceiling of the bus, as if checking for something. "They were mine," she finally whispered. The past tense struck Mr. Howard like a physical blow. Before he could ask another question, the light changed, and Lena retreated back into silence. When they arrived at school, he discreetly handed her the album, watching as she tucked it deep inside her backpack with shaking hands. "Thank you," she murmured, then hesitated. "My real name is Lena Taylor." The words hung in the air for a moment before she hurried off the bus, disappearing into the stream of children. Taylor. Not Hall. After his morning route, Mr. Howard drove straight to Oak Ridge Elementary instead of back to the depot. The main office was quiet this time of day, with most of the morning rush handled. "Margaret," he greeted the secretary who'd been at the school almost as long as he'd been driving. "Got a minute?" Margaret smiled warmly. "For you, Howard? Always. What's troubling you?" He leaned in, keeping his voice low. "That new girl on my route, Lena. Lena Hall. Do you know anything about her family?" Margaret's fingers flew across her keyboard. Hall. Here we go. Lena Hall, 3rd grade, registered 4 months ago. Previous school listed as Westfield Elementary in Chicago. She adjusted her reading glasses. Guardians are Daniel and Crystal Hall. Anything specific you're looking for? Does it say anything about a Taylor family? Maybe previous guardians? Margaret frowned, scrolling through the file. No Taylors here. Says the Halls have had full custody since birth. She looked up at him curiously. Why do you ask? Mr. Howard shrugged. Just something she mentioned. Probably nothing. But it wasn't nothing. As he turned to leave, Margaret called him back. Oh, wait. There's a note here about special accommodations. She squinted at the screen. It says not to display her photo in yearbooks or school publications. Privacy request from the guardians. That evening, Mr. Howard sat at his kitchen table with a notepad, writing down everything he knew. Lena Taylor. A family in photos that didn't match her current guardians. A transfer from Chicago. No photos allowed. On impulse, he called an old friend, Sandra Kim, who had started as a school bus driver with him years ago before becoming a social worker for Child Protective Services. Howard, she greeted warmly. Don't tell me you're calling to invite me to your retirement party already? Not yet, Sandra. He hesitated, then explained everything. The crying, the photos, the name discrepancy. There was a long silence when he finished. I shouldn't do this, Sandra finally said. But email me whatever details you have. Names, dates, anything the girl mentioned. I'll run a discreet check. 2 days later, Sandra called back. The records look legitimate, she said, her voice tight with professional concern. Too legitimate, actually. Perfect court papers, flawless transfer documents, complete medical history, no gaps, no inconsistencies. That's good, isn't it? Mr. Howard asked, confused. No, Howard, it's not. Real records have quirks, delays, missing forms. These are too perfect, like they were all created at once. She paused. And I found something else. I searched for Lena Taylor from Chicago, born on the date you gave me. Mr. Howard's grip tightened on the phone. And? There was a custody battle last year between a Terrence and Janelle Taylor over their daughter Lena. Multiple court appearances, allegations of abuse from the mother against the father. Then suddenly, everything stops. No resolution, no final hearing, nothing. Mr. Howard felt a chill creep up his spine. What happened to them? That's the thing, Sandra replied grimly. According to my colleague in Illinois, Janelle Taylor filed a missing persons report for herself and her daughter 6 months ago. They simply vanished during the court proceedings. The implication hung heavy between them. I need you to promise me something, Sandra, Mr. Howard said, pacing his small kitchen with the phone pressed to his ear. Keep this investigation quiet. If these people are who we think they are. I understand, Sandra replied. But Howard, if this child is in danger, we need to move quickly. That night, Mr. Howard barely slept. Images of Lena's tearful face kept appearing in his dreams, along with the smiling family from the photos, a family that might be devastated by their daughter's disappearance. The next morning, he watched with renewed concern as the black Mercedes pulled up to the gates of Pine Ridge Estates. The man, Daniel Hall, if that was even his real name, checked his watch impatiently while Crystal Hall straightened Lena's collar with cold precision. When Lena boarded, Mr. Howard noticed a new development, a thin silver bracelet around her wrist that hadn't been there before. Good morning, Lena, he said warmly. Clipboard duty again today? She nodded, but her eyes darted nervously to the bracelet. When she thought he wasn't looking, she tried to slide it under her sleeve. That's a pretty bracelet, he commented casually. It's so they know where I am, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It has a tracker. Mr. Howard's blood ran cold. Who puts tracking devices on their children? During his lunch break, he met Sandra at a small cafe far from both the school and the CPS office. I've got more, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Your instincts were right. The custody case between the Taylors got ugly. Terrence Taylor had connections, money, influence. When the court seemed to be leaning toward granting Janelle full custody, Both she and Lena disappeared before the final ruling. Kidnapped? Mr. Howard asked. That was the assumption, until this turned up. She pointed to a document. 3 weeks after they vanished, a relocation order appeared in the system, signed by Judge Harmon, granting temporary custody to family friends while the case was pending. That's how Lena and her mother seemingly fell off the radar. Mr. Howard studied the paper. But you don't believe it's legitimate? Sandra's expression hardened. Judge Richard Harmon was disbarred 3 months ago. The state bar found he'd been falsifying documents in multiple custody cases, all involving children who ended up with wealthy foster families with no prior connection to the biological parents. A trafficking operation, Mr. Howard whispered, the words feeling like poison on his tongue. Sandra nodded grimly. We think so. But it goes deeper than one corrupt judge. These operations need lawyers, doctors, school administrators, a whole network to create new identities and silence questions. What about Lena's mother? If she disappeared at the same time? Sandra's eyes filled with sadness. That's where it gets worse. Janelle Taylor was found 2 months ago in a motel room outside of Milwaukee. Apparent overdose. She paused. But there were irregularities in the investigation, and her death conveniently resolved the custody dispute, leaving no one to come looking for Lena. Mr. Howard felt sick. Except she did have someone looking for her. The pictures, Sandra. There were 3 children in that family photo. Sandra's eyes widened. Siblings? I need to look into that immediately. As Sandra hurried back to her office, Mr. Howard drove to his afternoon pickup at Oak Ridge with a heavy heart. He watched Lena more carefully than ever now, noticing how she constantly adjusted the tracking bracelet, how her eyes scanned for cameras, how she flinched at sudden movements. That afternoon, as the children filed off the bus, he gently stopped Lena. Lena, he said softly, I want you to know you can trust me. If there's anything you need to tell me, anything at all about home. Her eyes widened with fear. They have cameras everywhere, she whispered urgently. In my room, in the bathrooms. They listen to everything. They'll know if I talk to you. Before he could respond, she pressed a folded piece of paper into his hand. Please help me, she breathed, then darted off the bus. Heart pounding, Mr. Howard waited until the school parking lot was empty before unfolding the paper. Inside was a childish drawing of a house with 4 stick figures, the same family from the photos. Below it, in careful printing, 3225 Willow Street, Chicago. My brother and sister are still there. Please tell them I'm alive. That evening, Sandra called with news that confirmed his worst fears. I found the siblings, she said. They're in foster care in Illinois. After their mother disappeared and their father was arrested on fabricated charges, they were separated from Lena. The oldest one, Marcus, keeps insisting his sister was sold, but no one believes him. My God, Mr. Howard breathed. How big is this operation? Mr. Howard knew he needed to be cautious. If the Halls were monitoring Lena as closely as she claimed, any suspicious behavior on his part could put her at greater risk. But after learning about her siblings and the true horror of her situation, waiting was no longer an option. The next morning, he prepared his bus with extra care. Under the dashboard, hidden from view, he mounted his personal dashcam, the one he normally used while driving his car. It was small but captured high-quality video and audio. As the black Mercedes pulled up to the gate at Pine Ridge Estates, Mr. Howard watched through the side mirror, recording everything. Today, something was different. Lena's eyes were red and puffy, her shoulders trembling more noticeably than usual. Crystal Hall kept a tight grip on her arm, fingernails digging visibly into the child's skin. Remember what we talked about? The woman hissed, loud enough for the camera to pick up. Not a word to anyone, or you know what happens. Please, Lena whimpered. I didn't mean to. It fell out by accident. Daniel Hall stepped close, his voice low and threatening. We've invested too much in you to let you ruin everything. One more mistake, and you'll never see daylight again. Understand? Lena nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face. When she boarded the bus, Mr. Howard forced himself to maintain his usual friendly demeanor, but inside he was seething with rage. As they drove away, he glanced in the mirror to see the Halls watching the bus, Crystal talking into what appeared to be a phone. "Lena," he said gently once they were several blocks away. "Did something happen this morning?" She stared at her lap, silent for several minutes. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "They found a drawing I made. Of my real family." Her small hands trembled. They said if I tell anyone else, they'll hurt Marcus and Jasmine. They know where they are." Mr. Howard's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Lena, I promise you, we're going to help you. But I need to ask, have they hurt you?" Slowly, Lena rolled up her sleeve. Angry purple bruises marked her upper arm in the distinct pattern of fingerprints. "There's more," she whispered, lifting the edge of her shirt just enough to reveal a large, yellowing bruise across her ribcage. Mr. Howard fought to keep his voice steady. "We're going to get you out of there, Lena. Very soon." That afternoon, he sent the footage to Sandra. Within an hour, she called him back. "I've shown this to my supervisor and a detective from Special Victims," she said, her voice urgent. "This is enough to open an investigation, but not enough for an emergency removal without more evidence of the broader operation. If we move too quickly, others involved might destroy evidence or disappear." "So Lena stays with these monsters?" Mr. Howard asked incredulously. "Just for a few more days," Sandra explained. "We've got a young investigator named Maya who specializes in trafficking cases. She's taken a personal interest in Lena's case and is working around the clock. She's already connected 3 other suspicious adoptions to the same judge." Mr. Howard wasn't satisfied. "Sandra, you didn't see her face today. These people are escalating. I'm afraid for her safety." There was a long silence before Sandra responded. "There might be a way, but it's risky. If we had a pattern of evidence, multiple recordings over several days showing consistent abuse or threats, we could justify an emergency intervention." For the next 3 days, Mr. Howard recorded every pickup and drop-off. The Halls grew increasingly agitated, especially when Lena was late getting off the bus one afternoon because she'd left her lunchbox behind. On the 4th day, Crystal Hall slapped Lena across the face right there at the bus stop. The sound of it turned Mr. Howard's blood to ice, but he kept recording. When he showed Maya the compilation of footage, her expression hardened. "This is it," she said decisively. "We've got enough to move. I've been building this case for months, and Lena's situation connects at least 7 other trafficking victims we've identified. How soon can you get her out?" Mr. Howard pressed. "That's the complicated part," Maya admitted. "The Halls have cameras everywhere, and they monitor Lena constantly. A traditional home visit would put her at risk. They'd know something was coming. What if she never made it home from school?" Mr. Howard suggested. Maya looked at him questioningly. "I could take a different route home," he continued. "A mechanical issue that requires a detour. We coordinate with police to intercept the bus at a predetermined location, away from prying eyes." Maya considered this for a moment, then slowly nodded. "It could work. The Halls wouldn't know anything was wrong until it was too late." She pulled out her phone. "Let me make some calls. If we move quickly, we can do this tomorrow." They spent hours planning every detail. CPS would have emergency protective custody papers ready. Police would position unmarked cars along the detour route. A safe house was prepared for Lena until her siblings could be brought from Chicago. A trauma specialist would be on standby. The morning of the rescue operation dawned with an unexpected complication: rain. Heavy drops pelted the windshield as Mr. Howard completed his pre-trip inspection, wondering if the weather would affect their carefully laid plans. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Still a go. Units in position." When he pulled up to Pine Ridge Estates, his heart nearly stopped. Instead of the usual black Mercedes, a different car waited at the gate, a silver SUV with tinted windows. Crystal Hall stood beside it, holding an umbrella over Lena, while an unfamiliar man in a dark suit watched from the driver's seat. Mr. Howard's mind raced. Had they somehow been tipped off? Was this an attempt to change their routine and avoid the planned interception? He reached for his phone to alert Maya but stopped himself. Too risky with Crystal watching. Instead, he opened the bus door with his usual smile. "Good morning, Lena. Nasty weather today." Crystal's grip on Lena's shoulder tightened visibly. "Lena won't be taking the bus home this afternoon. Doctor's appointment. I'll pick her up at noon." Mr. Howard felt his carefully constructed plan crumbling. "I see. Well, we'll miss her this afternoon." He forced a cheerful tone. "Lena, want to help with the clipboard?" As Lena moved toward the steps, Crystal yanked her back. "No need for that today. She has a test to study for." The look of terror in Lena's eyes told Mr. Howard everything he needed to know. They were planning to run. Once Crystal was out of sight, Mr. Howard immediately called Maya, explaining the change in plans. "They're going to take her," he said urgently. "We need to move now." "We can't," Maya replied, frustration evident in her voice. "The emergency custody order isn't ready until noon. Judge Wilson insisted on reviewing the evidence himself." "Noon will be too late," Mr. Howard insisted. "I know these types, they're spooked. They'll disappear with her." After completing his morning route, Mr. Howard parked at the school rather than returning to the depot. From his vantage point, he could see the main entrance. At 11:30, 30 minutes before the supposed pickup time, the silver SUV pulled into the lot. Mr. Howard immediately alerted Maya, then watched as Crystal Hall entered the building. Minutes later, she emerged with Lena and a school administrator, nodding as the woman spoke. As they approached the SUV, Mr. Howard made a split-second decision. He started the bus and pulled it directly behind the SUV, blocking it in. Crystal whirled around, her face contorted with anger. The man in the suit stepped out, one hand reaching ominously inside his jacket. At that precise moment, 3 unmarked police cars swarmed into the lot, surrounding them. Maya leapt from one, flanked by officers with badges drawn. "Crystal Hall," she called out. "We have an emergency protective order for Lena Taylor. Please step away from the child." What followed was chaos. Crystal screaming that Lena was her daughter, the man in the suit attempting to flee before being tackled by officers, and Lena standing frozen in the middle of it all, rain soaking her small frame. Mr. Howard moved without thinking, rushing to Lena and wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. She clung to him, her entire body trembling. "You're safe now," he whispered, leading her to Maya's car while the officers handcuffed Crystal. At the police station, the full truth finally emerged. Maya sat with Mr. Howard while Lena spoke with specialized interviewers trained to work with traumatized children. "It's bigger than we imagined," Maya explained, her voice hollow with shock. "The Halls are just one couple in an international network. They buy children from custody disputes, runaways, even some foreign adoptions gone wrong." "But why?" Mr. Howard asked, still struggling to comprehend such evil. "Status, mostly," Maya replied. "Designer children for wealthy couples who don't want to wait through normal adoption channels. The kids are selected based on looks, intelligence, temperament, like shopping for a pet." Her voice broke with disgust. "And Lena? Her father sold her," Maya said bluntly. "He was deep in debt to some dangerous people. When he lost the custody battle, he made a deal with this network. They fabricated the disappearance, paid off the judge, created a new identity." She paused. "The mother found out and tried to flee with Lena, but they caught up to them. Her finishing was staged. Those poor children," Mr. Howard whispered, thinking of Lena's siblings. "The good news," Maya continued, "is that Lena's case has blown the entire operation wide open. We've identified at least 12 other children in similar situations across 3 states. Arrests are happening as we speak." A soft knock interrupted them. The interviewer stepped in, her expression somber. "Lena's asking for Mr. Howard," she said. "She's told us everything, The threats, the coaching, the punishments when she acted wrong or mentioned her real family. When Mr. Howard entered the interview room, Lena looked up with exhausted eyes. "They gave me pills," she said quietly. "To make me quiet. To make me forget my real mom and dad." Mr. Howard's heart shattered. "I'm so sorry, Lena. I tried to tell my teacher once," she continued. "But they found out. They always found out. After that, nobody believed me when I said they weren't my parents." A single tear slid down her cheek. "They said I was crazy. That I made up stories." Mr. Howard knelt beside her chair. "I believed you, Lena. And now everyone knows the truth." For the first time since he'd known her, Lena's face showed a flicker of hope. 3 weeks after the rescue, Mr. Howard stood nervously in the arrivals area of the airport. Beside him, Lena fidgeted with the edge of her new yellow dress, her eyes fixed on the gate where passengers were beginning to emerge. "What if they don't remember me?" she whispered, voicing the fear that had kept her awake the night before. "They've talked to you every day on video calls," Mr. Howard reminded her gently. "They haven't stopped asking about you since the day you disappeared." The investigation had moved with remarkable speed once the trafficking network was exposed. Janelle Taylor's case had been reopened, revealing she had indeed been finished to silence her search for Lena. Terrence Taylor was facing multiple charges for selling his daughter. The Halls and 7 other couples had been arrested, along with 2 judges, several lawyers, and a doctor who had provided falsified medical records. But most importantly for Lena, her Aunt Patricia, her mother's sister, had been granted emergency custody of all 3 Taylor children. Today, after nearly a year of separation, they would finally be reunited. "I see them," Maya called, pointing toward the gate. A tall woman with kind eyes appeared, holding the hands of 2 children, a lanky boy of about 12 and a girl around 10, both looking nervous and excited. Lena froze, overwhelmed. Then the girl looked up, spotted her, and broke into a run. "Lena!" she shrieked, breaking free from her aunt's grip and racing across the terminal. The sisters collided in a tearful embrace, clinging to each other, as if afraid they might be separated again. The older boy approached more slowly, his young face carrying the weight of too much responsibility and worry. When he reached them, he stood awkwardly for a moment before wrapping his arms around both his sisters. "Told you we'd find you," he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking. "Nobody believed me, but I knew." Patricia joined them, tears streaming down her face as she knelt to embrace her long-lost niece. "You look so much like your mama," she said softly. "She never stopped looking for you, baby. Never." Mr. Howard stepped back, giving the family space for their reunion. Maya joined him, watching the scene with misty eyes. 23 children rescued so far," she informed him quietly. "The investigation keeps growing. We've identified trafficking operations in 6 states now. All because one little girl was brave enough to reach out," Mr. Howard replied, his heart full as he watched Lena laugh for the first time since he'd known her. The following Monday, Mr. Howard was surprised to see Patricia waiting at the bus stop with all 3 children. "Lena insisted," she explained with a smile. "She says you're the only bus driver she trusts." As the children climbed aboard, Lena now flanked by her protective siblings, Patricia handed him an envelope. "The school district called me. They're holding a ceremony next week to honor you. Thought you might want to know in advance." The ceremony was both heartwarming and overwhelming for Mr. Howard. The superintendent presented him with a special commendation for his extraordinary vigilance and compassion. The mayor gave him a key to the city. But the most meaningful moment came when Lena stepped up to the microphone, her siblings beside her for support. "Mr. Howard saw me when nobody else did," she said, her voice small but steady. "He didn't just drive the bus. He paid attention. He believed me." She looked directly at him. "You saved my life." There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. That evening, as Mr. Howard sat with Sandra and Maya at a small celebration dinner, the school's superintendent approached their table. "I heard you're retiring this summer," he said. "Any chance we could convince you to stay on another year?" After what happened with Lena, we're implementing a new training program for all drivers on recognizing signs of trafficking. We could use someone with your instincts to help lead it. Mr. Howard thought about the retirement plans he'd been making for years, the fishing trips, the cross-country drive, the quiet mornings with no alarm clock. Then he thought about Lena's face that first day on his bus, silently crying out for help. I think I've got one more year in me, he decided. Just one, though. Later that week, as he completed his afternoon route, Lena and her siblings were the last to exit the bus. Mr. Howard? She asked hesitantly. Will you still be our bus driver until summer vacation? He smiled warmly. Of course I will. And next year too? She pressed, hope shining in her eyes, eyes that no longer held shadows of fear and secrets. Next year too, he promised. I'm delaying my retirement a bit. Lena broke into a radiant smile. Good, she declared. Because I told all the other kids how you rescued me, and now everyone wants to ride on your bus. As they walked toward Patricia, who waited at the stop with open arms, Lena turned back. You're a hero, Mr. Howard, she called. But I guess you already knew that. Mr. Howard watched them go, 3 siblings walking hand in hand, their laughter carrying back to him on the spring breeze. In 27 years of driving, he'd watched thousands of children grow up, moving through his bus and through life. But Lena Taylor, the quiet girl who had taught him that sometimes the most important cries for help are silent ones, would always hold a special place in his heart. Heroes come in all shapes and sizes, he murmured to himself as he closed the bus door. Sometimes they're just ordinary people who choose to pay attention when it matters most.